Hello, I'm the awesome tutor, and today we're going to be looking at water from Chemistry Unit 3. So, water treatment. First, water is collected in a reservoir, and then it's filtered through grids. Then we allow it to settle, so like mud and other stuff like that fall to the bottom. Now, filtering through the grids, just want to say one thing, this is to remove large solid particles like leaves or trees. Now, a clumping agent is then added which makes tiny particles clump together, so they're easier to remove. And then it's filtered through sand. And chlorine or ozone is added which kills bacteria. It does not remove the bacteria. The bacteria are still there, they're just dead. So when you're drinking water which contains dead bacteria. They won't affect you because they're dead, but they're still there. It's not removing bacteria, it's killing the bacteria. Then we test the water for like the chlorine concentration, the amount of bacteria, or the pH. Because if there's too much chlorine, you're going to die because chlorine is toxic. If there's too little, that means there's a lot of bacteria, which means you will die because bacteria will affect you. And if the pH is too acidic or too alkaline, obviously you're going to die as well. So that's why it's tested. Now hard water. What do we mean by hard water? Hard water means it contains calcium or magnesium ions. And it forms because rainwater passes through rocks, specifically limestone, especially for ions like calcium. And some of the calcium ions, or magnesium, but calcium in the case of limestone, dissolve in the water, and this makes the water hard. How do we test for hardness? Well, soap. Soft water forms a lather or bubbles with soap, but hard water, the soap reacts with the calcium ions or magnesium ions in the water to make something called scum. So what is scum? Now, here we have the equation. Calcium chloride, we see we have the calcium here, so calcium ions in the hard water react with soap, and is called sodium stearate. You don't necessarily need to know this equation, but you should know that scum is formed when hard water reacts with soap. So this scum is formed, and we have sodium chloride left. And so we say that hard water uses more soap because it reacts with soap to give you calcium stearate, to give you a scum. And so you need to use more soap in order to wash things. Now this calcium stearate, the scum, is what we call a white precipitate. It's a precipitate because it's a solid. The hard water is liquid, and the soap is obviously like solid, and a white precipitate called scum is formed. It's a precipitate which contains the calcium ion here. So the calcium ion has been removed from the water, which means the water is now soft. So the more soap you use, the more you soften the water. Now hard water advantages. Calcium ions, they strengthen the teeth and the bones. And hard water actually tastes better than soft water. And calcium reduces the risk of heart disease. So a disadvantage would be that scum is formed. But advantages are these. So temporary hardness. We have two types of water, temporary and permanent. Some water can have its hardness removed by heating, and this is called temporary hard water. And obviously if we're going to use heat, that means we're going to use energy. That means it's going to be expensive. And temporary hard water, specifically, it contains the hydrogen carbonate ion, which you need to know. And that's what makes it temporary hard water. Because this is the equation. If we add heat, this reaction occurs. This endothermic reaction occurs. The calcium hydrogen carbonate. Okay, the calcium carbonate is formed, then carbon dioxide, then water. And because the calcium ions have been removed from the water, here we have the water, which contains the calcium ion and the hydrogen carbonate ion. It's hard because it contains the calcium ion, and it's temporary because it contains the hydrogen carbonate ion. This reaction, this heating reaction, has removed the calcium ion from the water, so now the water is soft. So that's how the hardness is removed. And this calcium carbonate that's formed, we call this scale or lime scale. And this is also a white precipitate. And because it's this precipitate, it settles out of the water, and that's why it's no longer in the water. So that's why the water is now soft, not hard. Because hard water contains calcium ions. If they're removed, the water is now soft. Now scale, lime scale. Forms on heating elements like kettles, and the heating elements get coated with the scale, and this means costs more money because you need more energy to heat them because the scale affects how well the water or whatever you're putting inside the kettle is heated. And also pipes get blocked. Now softening water. We went through two of these methods. Soap removes calcium ions by this equation. Heating removes temporary hardness, which we said was expensive. But the best way to remove hardness from water, to soften the water, is by something called ion exchange, which uses resin, which is a substance which contains sodium ions. Now here we have water with the calcium ions, so this is hard water. Remember, hard water also contains magnesium ions or calcium ions. And this hard water, passes through an ion exchange column which contains the resin. And the sodium ions, they displace the calcium ions. And because the calcium ions are no longer in the water, we have sodium ions in the water. Because the calcium ions are no longer in the water, that means the water is now soft. Okay, the water now contains sodium ions, not calcium. It has been displaced. So the calcium ions are no longer in the water, so now it is soft. And obviously, most of the sodium ions will now have been used up. So we need to keep refreshing this ion exchange column so we can add stuff like sodium chloride to refresh the ion exchange column. Now, fluoride in water. Some governments, some countries add fluoride or chloride in their water. And fluoride reduces tooth decay. But some people have a problem with putting fluoride in water because it's essentially taking medication against your free will. So there's no right to choose. So there's some ethical issues. And also there's something called fluorosis, which creates a white streak in your teeth, which is bad. Now, water filters. Some people prefer to filter their drinking water. And if the filters contain carbon, it removes unpleasant taste like chlorine. And ion exchange resins, some of them contain ion exchange resins, which obviously, as we said before, softens the water because it removes the calcium ions by displacement. And some filters contain silver particles like silver nanoparticles, which kill the bacteria. And yeah, this has been the Awesome Tutor. Bye!